Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today I want to talk about something that's unprecedented in a Path of Exile temporary league economy, and that is the 7th day exchange ratio between Exalted Orbs and Chaos Orbs in the Harvest League. So you see here that there's 193 Chaos Orbs that you can buy for one Exalted Orb. And I think there's a genuine problem that is sort of hidden by these stats, and that is the growing problem of bot cheating in Path of Exile at the moment. And I want to discuss why this is evidence of growing problems with bot cheating, and a couple of ideas as to how it can be dealt with. So, firstly, for comparison, let's talk about the typical prices of Exalted Orbs in Chaos Orbs on day 7 or 8 of other leagues. So this is a Delirium League on PoE Antiquary, a website that tracks historical prices, but this is the end of the league. We don't want the day 91 prices in the league. What we want is the day 7 prices. So, to take one historic league, this is Incursion. Day 7 price, 77 Chaos. Day 8 price, low 80s. Metamorph, and prices are a bit higher in more recent leagues. We have a sort of 106, 110 range, and before it spiked, so it didn't really jump up until about day 14 of the league. Blight is next, and here's Blight. Blight was the highest on record before the current league, 155. It actually fell off for a bit there, and it fell off again later, and both of these drops were caused by ban waves of bot cheats. Legion was a league that actually vomited out currency in unbelievable amounts, 112. Synthesis didn't have as much currency dropping, and here we have about 90 chaos as the Exalt ratio there. Betrayal was the league in which Exalted Orbs probably had the highest utility of any league in the game's history. We had just seen the changes to the crafting bench, some incredibly powerful new crafts were added, most of which cost raw Exalted Orbs, and additionally, it was a multi-mod meta. Multi-mod was still in its broken old state, broken as in brokenly overpowered, and as a result, it was very popular to seek to multi-mod items. Despite that, 95. So what we're seeing here is that there's something very different about Harvest League. Something is not as it normally is. And what I actually think that is that this league, the demand for Exalted Orbs is lower than usual, but the supply of Chaos Orbs is so much higher that it's more than made up for that. So when I say the demand for Exalts is a bit lower, what I mean there is that the Harvest crafting systems provide a large number of ways for in-game crafters to add additional mods onto items. So the core use of an Exalted Orb to slam it, as people say, which is where you just apply an Exalted Orb to an item, to a rare to add additional mods. This is actually of less use than usual. The secondary utility of Exalted Orbs is paying for Jun's bench crafts, and one of the key ones is the ability to lock the prefixes on an item so that you can scour the item. So if you've got an item that's got 3 incredible prefixes, let's say you get an absolutely perfect melee weapon. It's got Merciless, the highest tier of physical damage percent. It's got Dictators, which is the highest tier of hybrid physical damage percent. And it's also got Flaring, the highest tier of flat physical damage. This item won't exist in the game, most likely, in a league. But if you did get this combination, you would then be able to add a suffix to the item, which locks those, which makes the prefixes unable to be changed, and this suffix, crafting it on the item, costs you 2 Exalted Orbs. Then you could scour the item, and then you could exalt it, hoping to get the top tier of attack speed, the mod of Celebration. If you do, your item just got a lot better. So that's a secondary utility of Exalted Orbs. And again, in the Harvest League, this is less useful than it usually is, because if you want to get top tier attack speed on an item, the best way to do that is not to lock the prefixes, scour it, and then craft further on it. The best way to get that is by having just some tier of attack speed on it, and then use one of the harvest crafts that removes a speed mod from an item and adds a new speed mod in its place. That's a far more powerful way of getting it. Now that craft is rare and expensive, but it's so much more powerful than the old school method of metacrafting that people aren't really going to do as much of that spending Exalted Orbs on metamod crafting. So with all of that in mind, if I'm saying the Exalted Orb demand is actually down a little bit, what on earth causes this? Well, what it is that Harvesters had a very smooth launch from technical perspectives. So what I mean by that is there's been no widespread reports of game crashes. This actually helps bot cheats. It helps them more than it helps a human player. A human player can experience a crash and then instantly go, shit, have a bit of a grumble, log back in and get back to whatever map they were in, or if the map instance completely crashed, then they can just grumble and start a new one. On the other hand, a bot cheat is likely to need human intervention at this point. And given that one human will oversee several bot cheat programs at once, at that point, that's not going to happen immediately. And so this means that bot cheats actually function better, much better, when there's a smooth launch. And yeah, as I say, Harvest has been incredibly smooth. So this means that the bots are operating at maximum efficiency. And you can see a bit of evidence for this. If we have a look at the most buggy launch in Path of Exile in recent times, you'll see, and that was Delve, you'll notice that the price of Exalted Orbs was pretty low and actually took quite a while to get up to where it sort of plateaued for the league. This is before the changes to the crafting bench, so the Exalted Orbs were lower all league than they are now. But you'll see that it sort of stayed for a while in this range. It really took about 3 weeks before it started trending back upwards again. And that was because Delve was a bug-riddled mess when it launched. Another league that was particularly buggy at launch was Synthesis, and Synthesis again, you'll see that it was a slow rise. If you have a look at the Synthesis flashback event, which unfortunately I don't have the information for here, maybe I do. Yes, I do. Flashback Synthesis. This was a perfectly smooth launch, and you'll see that even by day 6, Exalts were at 175. So prices went up, and again, this was a league that happened in a context where there were no major technical issues at all. So, with that in mind, I think that the question needs to be asked, is the Chaos Orb recipe doing more harm than good? So it's bots overwhelmingly that are turning in Chaos recipes. It's not like people aren't doing it early in a league. Early in a league, real legitimate players often use the Chaos recipe an extensive amount. And you'll see that the popular Twitch streamer Path of Math, who also has a YouTube channel, he's one of the main advocates of playing Ball Lightning Miner at the moment, has a great build outline for that build. But he streamed himself doing the Chaos recipe for most of the first 12 hours of the league, because at that period in time, each recipe that you're turning in was getting you, if the Chaos Orb to Exalt ratio was 40, it only took 20 Chaos Orb recipe turn-ins to get you an Exalted Orb. And he made himself 10 Exalts doing this very early, basically before 12 hours had passed after league start. So it is used by legitimate players as well. But what I'm thinking is that it would be better for I think it would be a better overall experience if the Chaos Orb recipe from level 60 to perhaps 72 or 75 was changed to provide alchemy orbs instead. Alchemy orbs are more useful to a player that is struggling with Katava than Chaos Orbs are. That's because if you get an item dropping on the ground that has the right sockets for you, and it's in an item slot that you need an upgrade in, then it's most likely going to drop as a normal item, in which case you want an alchemy orb rather than to have to first, if you get a Chaos Orb, you can't use the item until you've made it rare somehow. So for that reason, I think that it would be better for players that are struggling to get past Katava to have access to alchemy orbs instead. Then we come to the point where bots are not very good at bots are not very good at mapping compared to storyline zones. Storyline zones have predictable layouts and also don't require an item to get access. Whereas for a bot cheat that's trying to run maps, maps often can have predictable layouts too, but you'll run out of access to the same map all the time unless you have a very well developed endgame atlas. And the problem for bot cheats with using an endgame setup, an endgame atlas, is that if the account gets banned, they've lost an enormous amount of time until they're able to get back. On the flip side, if they have an account banned in Act 9, then it's only 3 hours of gameplay for an experienced fast leveler to get back to Act 9 on a new account. And of course, Path of Exile being a free game, that's entirely possible. So one thing I think should be seriously considered is changing the workings of the Chaos Orb recipe so that keep the level 1 to 59 version being Chance Orbs, and then consider 60 to maybe 70, maybe 72, something like that being Alchemy Orbs, then have a region where it's Chaos Orbs, and then have a region where it's Regals. Most players aren't going to want Regal Orbs because Regal Orbs tend to be, although not the case in this league, because Chaos Orbs are so cheap, because the supply of them is so high. But normally Regal Orbs tend to be massively oversupplied in an established league, and consequentially end up being, so worthless even that people take them off their loot filters by the end of a league. Not the case now, and so the Regal Orb recipe is actually worth doing, but it won't be for long. Okay, so if there are changes to the Chaos Orb recipe, I think that's a start. However, I think the other thing that should be done is a couple of new attacks on the business side of the bot cheats. So the bot cheat software, people don't just run it to acquire ill-gotten currency to fund their own builds. Mostly it's done by commercial operations who look to sell currency on basically a grey market. This is cheating. Like, people who buy currency can, should, and will be banned from the game. Well, at least will if they're caught. It is a fairly hard thing to track. But these cheat outlets, what they'll do is they just run a numbers game. They will then, basically sell currency, and they advertise it in-game to people that either don't know it's cheating or don't care. Mostly it's to people that don't know that it's cheating. Mostly the people who buy currency aren't the experienced endgame players. They're people who are fairly new to the game and who just simply get sucked into thinking, oh well, I'm used to pay-to-cheat games because that's the normal in the free-to-play industry. So I'll go to this website and they're selling currency orbs. Oh yeah, that's okay. I'll do that. And the way that they inform these players about their services is by spamming in-game chat channels. Well, I think you could attack their ability to spam by making it so that you need to reach some in-game milestone, and until you've reached that in-game milestone, you are unable to change your chat channel. So the game randomly allocates you to a global channel and a trade channel when you log in, and you can change. You can move from one to another at will. If you make it so that until your character has defeated Innocence in Act 5, you are stuck in the channel that you land in, or maybe you are unable to change channel more than once per 30 minutes. That would allow, for instance, someone that's a French speaker, they'd be able to log in. If they know the French channel exists, they'd be able to join it. French language channel, they can chat away, but they can't then go and spam 6 different channels with an ad for some pay-to-cheat service. So that would be one thing I would consider doing. Make it so that you can't change your chat channels, your global channel or your trade channel, until you've reached a certain milestone in-game. I suggest Innocence, but maybe something else, maybe something a little bit earlier. I think that a player that is The first boss that a player that is new to the game might have serious trouble with would be Act 3 Piety. So maybe you could say after you've killed Gravicius or gone past Gravicius. So once you've reached Lunaris Temple 1, then at that point, like that's a milestone that takes a while to get to. The benefit to this is that if the pay-to-cheat sites then want to make a new generation of spammers, it ties up their computers for a long time in order to level to that point. And so it takes up it's not that it takes more human labor per spam message sent out. That's still going to be the same. It's going to be an account creation, and then there's a bit of time, and then they spam. But it's going to tie up their PCs for longer. And these places don't operate on unlimited budgets. They're generally pretty low margin as far as I'm aware, and so they will end up needing to spend more money in order to acquire countermeasures to this, in order to have more PCs to keep their spamming going. This would mean a reduction in the amount of spam that players see, and I think the inconvenience to legitimate players would be pretty trivial. So that's the first chat change that I would suggest. The second change that I would suggest, GGG banned these spammers pretty quickly, or maybe they ban them, maybe they put them on some sort of invisible auto silence where they can scream as much as they want, but no one can see their comments in chat. Something akin to being shadow banned on Reddit, which is where you're not informed that you're banned, but you're banned. And so there are a couple of shadow ban functions inside the game already. For instance, if the game has detected that you're botting, it will stop the drops of high-end currency. That technology already exists. What I think GGG should do is every time that they ban someone for spamming, have as part of the automated process, so the account gets banned, and there is also a response from a developer that comes across in the same chat channel as the spam message saying, please note, this is an official message from the game. That the site that advertised the person that advertised that that site has been banned. If you buy from them, your account will be banned too. GGG takes a zero tolerance approach to cheating. That, I think, would be an effective education method for the players that don't realize that this is not a pay-to-cheat game. It would mean that at the same time that they hear about these pay-to-cheat services, they'd also see a very quick reply, very official reply saying, do not use, do not use, do not use. So those are a couple of suggestions I've got, but fundamentally I think it is time to ask the question, is the Chaos Orb recipe causing more harm to the game causing more harm to non-cheating, to legitimate non-cheating players than the benefit it creates? My opinion is that it does, and that should be changed. I'm sure that some people disagree. Solo self-found players in particular seem to disagree with this, but I feel at least that the game should be balanced around the core mode, not around optional difficulty settings, but obviously some people are going to disagree. I do think that there's really no drawback to the chat changes, to making it so that you are locked to changing your chat channel no more than once per 30 minutes until you reach some particular milestone in-game, some progression milestone. Whether that be Innocence, whether it be something a bit earlier than that, is fine either way. Interested to hear your thoughts though, and where you think the Exalted Orb and Chaos Orb prices are going to go from here. I think we're going to see a league where Chaos Orbs are basically valueless unless there's a serious ban wave, and that's despite having the Harbinger Zana mod available, which is just a huge sink for Chaos Orbs because it creates Exalted Shards in quite considerable numbers. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. I'm going to leave it there. Have a good one.